Hi guys, Aaron Wilson at Lucas Oil Stadium, the home that Peyton Manning built and a home today that the Texans dismantled. The resilient Texans, resurgent Texans, after an 0-3 start, a rocky start to the season, are now 7-5. And victors in 4 games in a row, all of them one-score victories. And the Texans were 0-5 at the start of the season in these one-score situations, not knowing how to win, not really having the blueprint for how to win in the clutch in the fourth quarter. And now we're seeing the real blueprint, and as one player put it, the DNA of the Texans, which is a stalwart defense, the top-ranked defense in the NFL, a good enough offense. And the return of CJ Stroud did pay some dividends, showed some rust in terms of decision-making, and acknowledged that was a very bad decision on the interception. That said, CJ made a difference. His throwing, his accuracy, his willingness to put the football into tight spaces, his connection with Nico Collins, who now has over 4,000 career receiving yards. Today, 5 catches for 98 yards and scores on a reverse. So you look at everything that the Texans needed. The running game was pretty average. You had Woody Marks having to gut it out, showed a lot of toughness, I thought, to play through that foot injury. Then the defense absolutely lights out when they had to be. They said they were going to contain Jonathan Taylor, and they did. Jonathan Taylor has scored 15 touchdowns on the ground this season. Today he has 0. He didn't rush for 100 yards. He wound up with 80. He had a solid game, but he certainly didn't have any game-breaking plays with the exception of the 33-yard catch and run. So the defense, more than good enough. Why Shane Steichen thought it was a good idea to throw at Derek Stingley Jr., of all people, the all-pro corner on 4th down, when you got to have it, didn't make any sense at all. And I wonder if Stingley, getting a chance to chat with him after the game, if he was surprised that they did that. But I thought that today showed a preview of sorts of what the Texans could be like in January football. Yes, I'm talking about playoff football. Playoffs, yes, with CJ Stroud. Back from this 3-game concussion, and I think he can only play better than this, but I thought this was good enough with the kind of defense they play. So it's a combination of things. Need better running game, yes, but CJ getting it done with the targets that he has, with Dalton Schultz catching 7 passes, with Jaden Higgins having a career high for receiving yards, the rookie from Iowa State. Offensive line holding up their end of the bargain, protecting CJ Stroud. And it wasn't a perfect game by the offense by any stretch, but that was a creative play call. You go play action, and then you give a reverse to from CJ Stroud, handing it off to Nico Collins, and he does the rest. So guys running interference for him, and a heck of a touchdown. They just they don't have a fancy name for that play, by the way. I asked Nico. They just call it reverse. So nothing cool like Stallion or Gizmo or New Jersey or whatever you want to call a play. They didn't have that. But yeah, this is the kind of game they can play. They have a relentless, suffocating defense, the top-ranked defense in the NFL, and second-ranked defense in terms of scoring. The Colts were the highest-scoring offense in the NFL entering this game, and the number 1 overall offense in terms of yardage. And today, they didn't score 20 points. This is the first time that the Colts have not scored at least 20 points this season. That's an accomplishment for this defense. And these are what I call quality wins, signature victories. Everybody was talking about how good the Colts are. And I know that they're sliding a little bit right now, having lost 2 in a row to the Chiefs and now to the Texans. And doesn't this bode well for next week? We'll get more into that as the Texans head to Arrowhead Stadium to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at where CJ and this team can be. CJ said that the team is super dangerous, in his words. Losing some close games earlier, but now finding a way to win close games after Thanksgiving. He says they can put themselves in position to do whatever they want to do. I agree with him. I think the Texans are capitalizing on the opportunity, and a lot of this has to do with leadership of DeMeco Ryans. You guys probably caught my interview with DeMeco and, of course, with his wife Jamila Ryans about the growth of him as a coach, the leadership that he has shown, having to adapt to the circumstances, having to deal with. They were considered a Super Bowl contender at the start of the year, and then they didn't live up to those expectations. And then righting the ship, and now climbing to 7-5. Indianapolis and Jacksonville both at 8-4, but the Texans are in business and in the thick of things in terms of the playoff hunt. So having Stroud back from the concussion, along with Jalen Petrie, that made a difference. They didn't run the football particularly well, but CJ was 22 of 35 for 276 yards. Had that one interception, but overall, a good football game by CJ. Led to a touchdown. They still win another one-score game. All of the Texans' losses, by the way, all 5 of those losses were by 8 points or less. And what's the difference? How the team finishes. As D'Amico Ryan says, they have resolve now. They're playing 60-minute football. They no longer look at one bad play and think that will send us into the tank, as he says. So the Texans are now back in the playoff picture, and the Colts are on the struggle bus. So they're not winning the close games. And yes, you had an interception. You had one bad play, pretty bad play by CJ, and that leads to the 19-yard touchdown pass from Daniel Jones to Alec Pierce. But overall, the Texans, they got it done. You had a Nick Chubb touchdown run, and then they tied again, the Colts, with a touchdown pass to Tyler Warren, their outstanding rookie tight end. They did a decent job on him. There was not a very good, I think that the Colts have a legitimate beef on that pass interference call on Kenny Moore on 3rd and 15 in the fourth quarter, after the play clock also seemed to run out. I don't know about the extra point. I don't really have a grid video of that. I know some people have talked a lot about the extra point. It wasn't a 1-point loss, though, for the Colts. So there was a pool report, and the back judge was looking at, according to referee Clay Martin, if the ball snapped as he looks down from the clock to the ball, they let that go. And that's what the ruling was on the play. Before, on the pass interference, he said that the official had an arm grab at the top of the route, and when he said when you look back at the play, the ball's in the air and you see the ball in the air, that makes it pass interference. So that's the explanation from the referees on that. No explanation on the extra point, but that's a different topic. I have to look more at that. Yeah, just like they said, Alec Pierce is a big play guy, very explosive, 4 catches for 79 yards. But for the most part, the Texans contained them. Also, by the way, congratulations to cornerbacks coach Dino Vasso. Stayed home. They had a addition to their roster, a new baby. So congratulations to the Vassos. And so the other defensive coaches filled in for him. Injuries. Jalen Reed's forearm injury, I've been told it's serious. You probably saw his lengthy post discussing it. Kind of sounded like he was, saying like, hey, it's a tough break and I'll be back next year, that kind of thing. So that's how I took it. I was told it's long term, probably a broken forearm. You got to think he's in a sling, and it's tough. So I feel bad for him, but it's definitely a setback because without him, they're very thin at safety. So we got to see maybe Kayvon Wallace. Can they go with Miles Bryant? See what they can do. Are they going to run some more nickel? Is Jalen Petrie going to play safety? We'll see how they handle that. On a more positive injury update, Azeez Al-Shire, he was checked for a concussion. He was cleared. He led them in tackles. Unfortunately for the Colts, star cornerback Sauce Gardner injured his right calf. They're saying it's a calf. Some speculated it was an Achilles. I don't know if it was. It looked like it might have just been a calf injury because he came back to the sideline in street clothes. He was in a walking boot. And if he tore his Achilles, there's just no way that he would even be in that situation where you're going to see him on the sideline. He'd be heading to the hospital. So looking again at the Stroud performance, only sacked twice. He's only been sacked 19 times. That's a career low for him. So the offensive line, also I wrote a large piece about the offensive line and how this configuration is working. And he had a 75.4 passer rating. Woody Marks gutted it out. Like I said, 19 runs, 64 yards, workmanlike performance from Woody, a long run of 16 yards. Nick Chubb gets into the end zone. And, I think that overall it was good enough on offense. I'm not so sure about this direct snap to Cade Stover thing. It's no fault on Cade. I just don't feel like they've practiced this enough. Maybe they've been working on it longer than we think. I'm curious to ask Nick Haley about that this week. It only netted them 3 yards on 4 runs. It just didn't seem to be the most effective strategy. I thought they should have taken the points at one point instead of going for it on 4th down. But splitting hairs. A win is a win. You don't ever look a gift horse in the mouth. You keep it, you take it, and you move on to the next thing. So Nico Collins, again, up to 4,025 career yards, 5 catches, 98 yards on 10 targets. So the involvement of Nico didn't stop just because you changed quarterbacks from Davis Mills to CJ Stroud. And I wonder what some that were saying, they shouldn't have CJ. CJ's going to mess up the momentum. He's not going to have the mojo. Well, he definitely helped the team. You look at what he did, I think with Davis, they were doing well. But I think with CJ, they can do even better. Davis did a great job. I'm not taking anything away from Davis. I'm just saying, and I said this, I didn't think there should be any quarterback controversy. It just didn't make any sense to me that people were, kind of trying to equate that. But I think a lot of that sort of recency bias, if you will, or maybe just kind of hating on people. I don't know. Jaden Higgins, like I said, 5 catches, 65 yards, 5 targets, career high, really season high, because it's not much of a career. It's his rookie year, but you get what I'm saying. 7 catches, 55 yards, and 8 targets for Dalton Schultz. Some key plays by Xavier Hutchinson, including a 24-yard catch. So 2 catches for 39 yards. He's always involved. Cade Stover, this time he caught the passes. They were thrown to him, 2 catches for 16 yards. Like I said, Azeez Al-Shire, the leading tackler with 8 stops. Kalen Bullock with 7. Miles Bryant with 5. They were certainly picking on Miles. They were looking for Miles. You could tell that. And Henry Toto, 5 tackles as well. E.J. Speed against his old team, 4 tackles. And Will Anderson Jr., a tackle for a loss, a quarterback hit. I thought that he looked really good as a sort of Mike linebacker / nose tackle when he bull rushed the center. And he said that he was kind of wanting to do that, wanting to rush from the middle. And it's cool. And they think, they can do more of that. Look at how the Packers and the Cowboys previously deploy Micah Parsons. Maybe Will Anderson Jr. should be kind of a where's Will type of situation. Move Will around. Just make a suggestion, coach. I'm sure DeMeco Ryans has lots of plans for him. 4 tackles again for Tommy Togiai and 3 tackles from Jalen Petrie. He made some plays, so he had a couple pass defenses, so I thought that was good. And just overall, looking at how they did, it was a pretty good performance overall. I mean, they only ran for 86 yards on 23 runs. Jonathan Taylor, 21 runs, 85 yards. Shane Steichen probably should have called Jonathan Taylor's number even more often. They made Daniel Jones look pretty ordinary. Daniel's, of course, been dealing with a fibula injury. I don't think that's why he had a tough game. He was only sacked once. He was pretty efficient in terms of, he didn't complete a lot of his throws. He's 14 for 27, but he passed for 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So he was solid, but the Texans were better. And so for the Texans now, it's about what's next. And we'll get into that all week. And of course, Arrowhead Stadium's been a real house of horrors for the Texans. It's where they lost that divisional round playoff game last year in the cold. It's where in December they lost and Tank Dell blew up his knee. It's also where Bill O'Brien and the Texans blew that huge lead in the divisional round the season before he was fired, which began many different coaching eras here. So looking at, these 1-score games and where the Texans are, their 4th straight win in this fashion, it's like they're learning how to win and not to be overwhelmed by negative plays. So this is their 4th straight game against the Colts that was decided by 4 points or fewer since the 2023 season. And the turnover and downs on 4th and 9 at their own 31-yard line, 1:45 left in the 4th quarter, and then they get the first down to run out the clock. I thought that everything the Texans did in terms of this sequence, where, there were, of course, the missed delay of game penalty on the Texans, the pass interference penalty that seemed shaky, all those things. So, yeah, Texans, they got a few breaks, and sometimes that happens. But for the Colts to throw at Derek Stingley Jr. is still inexplicable. I'll always be wondering about that, what they were thinking. Maybe they thought they would catch the Texans by surprise by having, a throw at the all-pro corner instead of going at Kamari Lassiter or someone else. So you look at everything the Texans did. I think that, it's a step in the right direction for sure. And I think that, the Texans are making some progress. So, going over everything, it was a solid game. I give CJ Stroud kind of like a C+, B- kind of deal, but there was some rustiness. I think that was to be expected from CJ, but he was good on third down. He was very good in the fourth quarter. Running back, there was some predictability in terms of first down runs. I thought, Marks made some clutch plays, Chubb a touchdown, and now Nico had 105 all-purpose yards, a 7-yard touchdown run for the go-ahead score, and he's had 300-yard receiving games since 2023 against the Colts. So he's been definitely a potent force against the horseshoe. So Dalton Schultz, solid game, like we said, 7 catches, 55 yards. And overall, it's a day where I think the offensive line kind of proved their point again, but they didn't have a lot of holes in the running game. There were still a few too many penalties. Defensive line, they had a sack from Sheldon Rankins. I thought there would be a lot more pressure, honestly. I'm a little surprised. I got to give the Colts some credit, but I think Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter, you expect them to get to the quarterback every time, in terms of every game, rather, not every play. That would be a tall order. So, solid job by the linebackers, Azeez Al-Shire in particular, and Henry Toto against Jonathan Taylor. And, the Texans normally play better in the secondary, but overall, they made the plays that they had to make. And that's kind of the story of this team. There were some issues with clock management. They had, some drive stall. The clock would run down. There were some timeouts. I thought they could have done a better job of that too. And then they could have gone up by 7 if they kicked the field goal. They opted to go for it. Just these tush-push plays with Cade Stover. Like I said, I didn't like them that much, but they still won the game. It didn't stop them from winning. And overall, that's what counts in this league. It's just about winning football games and advancing. So for the Texans now, this week is a week that they've got to focus. They got to get ready for Patrick Mahomes. They've got to not get cocky. I don't think they will. I think they are a focused bunch, and they are accustomed to these late game heroics. What they got to do next, I think, is put it away. Get a lead, hold the lead, and maybe even get to rest guys. That's something that would be a real accomplishment for the Texans if they could do that. But yeah, there were some ugly moments for the offense in terms of legal procedure, some confusions. The interception, of course, was an overthrow intended for Xavier Hutchinson. Throws into double coverage. As CJ said, he's got to take care of the ball. That's plainly on him. He said, I can't put my team in that position. He says he's got to be better. And then, early on, he thought he was rusty. He wanted, he thought he made some good decisions, but there's a couple plays he wants back. He thought he did a good job of taking what the defense was giving him. I agree with that for the most part. They need to, score on these drives. Don't kick field goals. But D'Amico said that for CJ, coming back, not having played in a few weeks, he thought he did a really nice job. He said if this was where he's starting, it's only up for him. He's excited to see how he continues to progress. So I think that box was checked today by CJ Stroud. So the Texans and CJ made another good point at the kind of team they have with this defense, which is, the best defense in franchise history and one of the best defenses maybe of the past decade or so. We'll see where they stack up in history. But he says he doesn't have to be Superman all the time. He doesn't have to be perfect, and he won't be perfect, but he knows that his team trusts him. So overall, they did a good job on crunch time, and that's what allowed them to be in position today to win the game. And doing that sets them up for a lot of good things, for meaningful football. I know a lot of people remember they'd ridden the season off. They were talking about fire Nick Caserio, fire Nick Caley, fire Cole Popovich. Lots of criticism of D'Amico Ryans, and that's what happens. That's the NFL. When you're not doing well, you get ripped. That's what happens in this league. But the Texans took a step forward, and now they have a chance to get, even the division, that's within reach now. All that's within their grasp. The Texans can grab it. They can hold it, and they can get to the playoffs. They could have a home playoff game if they could, win their division. A lot of good things can happen for the Texans. They just have to keep winning. They cannot relax. There's no margin for error after the way they started the season. I think they need both these games, and you would expect them to beat the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. And the way today went, why wouldn't the Texans beat the Colts at NRG Stadium to close out the regular season? Can the Texans beat the Chargers? Certainly. Why? Why wouldn't they be able to? Why wouldn't they be able to Chiefs? Why would the Texans have a problem with really any of these games? You think about, all the teams they can play, maybe down the road, like the New England Patriots. I don't think they have to be afraid of any of these teams. I think the Texans' defense is just that good. The offense has to do its part. Special teams, at least today, no touchdown returns. So a step in the right direction. And we'll see where this journey goes as we write the next chapter in Texans football. Guys, please watch, like, subscribe, and also hit the hype button. Love when you guys do that, or hit the super chat, all those things, tips. Appreciate it. Helps me a lot, helps my family. Much appreciated. We are over 21,000 people, and 21,000 and change, like about 21,100 and some odd people following the channel now. So that's great progress, and I look to continue to build this channel. Of course, I'll be on tonight on Sports Sunday on KPRC2 with DJ Bienemy, Randy McElboy, and Nick Mansis, all holding it down there back in Houston. So we'll have a great show. Me and DJ had a little post-game wrap. Good talking with DJ about the Texans, the state of the team, and everything we saw today at Lucas Oil Stadium and breaking the game down. And then, of course, at www.click2houston.com, I've got a lot of articles to write, so I need to get to it and get this video posted. So guys, thanks so much. And please check out the other video, which has locker room reaction, all the sound bites that you guys could hope for. Lots of sound. Got a lot of interviews, a lot of scrums, got a couple of one-on-ones, and bring it all to you here. That's been up for a while. So guys, check that out. And I'm going to head back to Texas in the morning. And we've got D'Amico Ryans, and we've got players from the locker room tomorrow. And so we got a lot more to come. And then Tuesday is a players sort of game plan day and day off for the players. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then head up to Kansas City, and then a gigantic football game. And the Texans, they'll be hyped for this one, I'm sure. And they're pretty healthy, with the exception of Jalen Reed. Speedy recovery to Jalen, who's injured his forearm and is in a sling currently, and posted a message which I shared on my Twitter account about how he feels. Obviously, an emotional moment. First spraining his knee during training camp and going into reserve, and now a new injury, and I expect this to be an injured reserve situation as well. Guys, thanks. Talk soon.